Representative Boles, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation about the 2026 session.
Well, hey, thanks for coming to visit.
All right, so let's just get right into it. What are your top priorities heading into this 2026 session?
Well, that's a great question. There's a lot of priorities in the House. Obviously, education is always a top priority every year. We got some initiatives this year as far as reading. Sufficient reading at a certain level by third grade is important. We know that the first 3 or 4 years of school, you're learning how to read. And the next 8 or 9 years, you're learning from reading. So if you don't know how to read, it's hard to learn going forward past that point. So we're going to really look at making better policies for that. For me, I'm the chair of Energy and Natural Resources Oversight, which basically is all energy, utilities, agriculture, and wildlife committees all report up to my oversight committee. And so I really focus on that avenue, especially energy and utilities, which is important. And so I got some bills that I'm working on in that lane. But also being a chairman, you're working with all the other members that filed bills that will be coming through your committee. And so that's a big topic for me. One of the bills that I'm filing that's energy related, it's called the Data Center Ratepayer Consumer Protection Act. And what we're looking at doing is we're seeing a lot of data centers come all over America, especially in Oklahoma. And so what we want to do is make sure, because we've seen other states where some data centers that came in, utility rates have went up. And these are large facilities. I'm talking one facility may equal 200,000 or 300,000 households of power. So just imagine that. And so what we want to do is put safeguards in place in state law that ensures that when a data center comes to town, wherever that may be, that they pay for the infrastructure cost. We don't want that cost to be shifted over to the ratepayers of Oklahoma. And so I think that's important, not just for my district, but across the whole state. We've heard a lot of concerns about that.
You mentioned you're the chair of that committee. How important is that of having somebody like you in Southwest Oklahoma also being the chair of that energy committee? Does that include oil and gas and everything?
Yeah, that's all energy, oil, gas, wind, solar, and then utilities is all utility policy. So your PSO, OG&E, all the co-ops, municipalities. So I think having someone in Southwest Oklahoma is important because, obviously I understand what our issues are in Southwest Oklahoma and we can advocate for that here at the Capitol.
When you think about Southwest Oklahoma specifically, what needs do you feel might be underaddressed at the Capitol?
Well, I'll tell you, we have pretty good representation up here right now between the different delegations up here. I would go through all the members, but I'll just give you one person. Trey Caldwell is the chair of the budget for the House. And so that's a very powerful committee. And as was mentioned, I'm the chair of Energy, Ag, Wildlife, and all those committees, which is very big in Southwest Oklahoma. We have Dick Lowe, Representative Dick Lowe, who's the chair of Education from Grady County. And Randy Warland's the chair of Judicial. Daniel Pay's the chair of, I think it's like DHS, Child, and I don't exactly know what all he does, but I know it's important. Yeah. And then Tony Hessenbach is chair of Higher Ed. So we got a lot of leadership people up here from Southwest Oklahoma. So it's great to work with them. A lot of times we have our own lanes that we all work on every day, but there are issues that affect our people consistently. And so if we have a big vote, I'll go talk to one of those members, be like, hey, what are you hearing from your people? I'm hearing from this from Stevens and Grady County, but what are you hearing from Comanche County? And kind of share notes.
What should taxpayers expect you to protect or push for in the budget this year, since I think that's the only thing constitutionally the legislature has to do is a balanced budget?
That's right. Yeah, that's always the most important thing we do each year. We have a lot of important policy, but as you mentioned, there's nothing constitutional about policy. What we always have a saying up here, if it was a good bill this year, it'll be a good bill next year. But when it comes to the budget, we have to balance our budget. Federal government in D.C., they don't have to. And so, that's why our deficits are going bigger and bigger every year to $39 trillion or whatever. In Oklahoma, we can't spend more money than we receive in. And if we have to make cuts or raise revenue. We got to balance it. And so, but as far as what I'm hearing, it looks like we're going to have probably a flat budget, maybe a little extra than we did the previous year, not a lot. But, as far as what we're looking to accomplish this year, I think property tax relief is a big thing. And there's a lot of different ideas on how we do property tax relief. But I think I'm definitely advocating for some sort of relief. Our people back home, they've been hit with a lot of inflation costs, whether it's the grocery store, utilities, even property taxes seem to go up every year. And so I think giving some relief would be a big deal this year. You know, last year we passed income tax reduction, we passed grocery sales tax exemptions at the state level. And so we've done a lot of tax reform over the past 4 or 5 years, but we haven't done any property tax reform. And so I think that'll be a big talking point this year, especially with the state question coming up.
What do you think maybe the biggest disagreements will lie this session? There's always disagreements. Do you have a feeling there's going to be an issue or maybe a particular party or what have you might?
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that. Every year is different. It takes its own role. And a lot of times we don't, like if you look at each session in the past, this is my 9th session, and what I thought would be the issue in January, by the time we get to the end of the session in May, isn't usually an issue. It's something that we had no idea that would happen. And so it's hard to predict that right now. But I will say, you know, there's obviously Republican and Democrat issues, like we don't agree on some things. But there's also urban and rural Oklahoma issues, like where we had differences in opinions, and then and everything in between. And so it's not always party line, and it's not always, you know, it's different perspectives. But at the end of the day, I think that's what makes good policy, right? Is you get people from different backgrounds, different opinions that are representing people all over Oklahoma. And what can we do to all come together and maybe instead of focusing on our differences, hey, what do we all agree to that will make a difference? And if we can focus on those things and move the needle forward, it'll be better for all of Oklahoma.
To me, that describes compromise perfectly. For you, how do you decide what you're willing to negotiate on and where you decide that line is in the sand?
That's a good point because you never get 100% of what you want. Like every bill, I have a business. I never get everything I want in business, right? And so same thing up here. If you're sold on, I got to get it 100% my way or no way, you usually leave session with getting nothing. I mean, that's just what happens. And so you have to be willing to make compromises, work with others, and maybe they have good ideas that you didn't think about. And so how I've always done things, try to work with all the stakeholders and try to get something that's a win-win. I think sometimes in life people think that there's a winner and a loser, and that happens sometimes. But I think up here, my goal is to try to get win-win situations. And maybe it's not exactly the way you want it or I want it, but we both get something we can take back to our districts and say, hey, this is what we did for you this year, and this is what will help you going forward.
Do you think there might be an issue that would define this session at the end of it?
Well, I think this session is going to be interesting because this is the governor sits last year to be governor. And so, what does he want his legacy to be when he leaves? And I think your last year is a lot of times how people remember you. And so I think that'll be a big year for him. We have a pretty, maybe split Senate as far as some things go. So interesting there, half the Senate's up for election. In the House, every one of us are up for election. Whether you're running for a different state or your same seat, there's an election for every House member this year. So anytime you get everyone up for election, it makes some interesting situations. But I do think, we talked about earlier, I think it brings a sense of urgency, right? All of us House members, we're not guaranteed next year, right? So we want to get something done this year because we may not be here next year. And so I think that does help when you get down to the end of the day is, hey, we all run for this seat for one reason, that's to help our district, make Oklahoma a better place. And knowing that this may be your last year, that you want to get something done.
If you can tell the Southwest Oklahoma residents, your constituents, one thing about this session, what you're working on or what you're feeling about this session, what would it be?
Well, for me, it would be probably the utility rates. I've heard from a lot of people that, the utility rates are too high, or maybe they're concerned about their rates going higher because of data centers. So for me, just hearing those concerns and saying, hey, we're going to run a bill that puts safeguards in state law so that we know that if data centers come to your area, they're not going to shift those costs to you, making your utility rates go higher. Putting those protections in place for ratepayers, I think, is important. And hopefully we'll get that through the finish line this year. We got a lot of momentum, a lot of support, but it's a big policy. And, it's anytime you get a big policy, it's hard to get it through the first year. And so it'll be a challenge, but I think we got a lot of good people working on it with us, and definitely looking forward to doing that. And really, for me, this is my last session. And so just finishing strong and giving 100%, and that way whenever I leave here, I have no regrets and did the best I could for my district.
Thank you so much, Representative Boles,
Hey,
for
thank
agreeing
you.
to this interview, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.